So when we talk about critical metrics, we're basically interested in the idea that tools and technologies of counting and of measurement are of importance for the way we imagine the world, or the way we make the world visible and thereby turn the world into something we can understand and act in. And we think this is important to study because this is also true for governments and states and various organizations that make important decisions in the world. A historical example of this could be the invention of the punch cards in the 19th century, that suddenly you had available a technology that made it possible for instance, the American bureaucracy to count its citizens and do statistics on its citizens and thereby control them in a way that wasn't possible before. So if we think of a contemporary example of this, we can think of what we call the smart city. And in this paradigm, there's a tendency to think of the city as a city of objects. This paradigm of government is very closely connected to what could be called the Internet of Things. That is, you use sensors and RFID chips to track where cars are, where garbage cans are in the city. And this means that the city becomes a city of objects that move around. And that easily turns into a political ambition of making this flow of object more effective. This is a good example of the fact that what is visible to you when you make decisions, when you make political ideals and visions about a city, is also what comes to guide your imagination of what is the good city or what is a preferred city to live in. Usually when you think about datafication, you think if I'm turned into a data subject, I might be exposed to surveillance. But we want to flip that thought around and saying that being visible is also sometimes a positive thing. It puts you on the map, on the agenda of political decision making and so on.
A lot of different research projects take place today, and a lot of research is published. And traditionally, the way that the importance and the impact of all this research that takes place at universities has been measured is by means of citations. So do other scientists cite this research or do they not? But today there's also increasingly a question about wider societal impact of research. And this is something we are very interested in the TANT Lab, where we try to make our own research travel. And we are also interested in developing new ways of tracing that and evaluating the importance of research in alternative ways. So one of the ways we've been trying to measure social impact of research is to look at who links to the projects that a place like the Center for Youth Research at Aalborg University publish. And when they describe the content of the research and the results on their websites, which actors take that up and link to it. So in this sense, we take the hyperlink as a sign of interest, as a sign that another actor is sort of attaching themselves to this research output. And that becomes an alternative metric for measuring research impact that goes beyond the scientific community.
One of the projects we have done in our lab is a recent collaboration with the Royal Danish Theatre. And they approached us because they wanted to make something visible that they hadn't been able to make visible before. And this was the emotional bonds between the Royal Theatre and the broader cultural audience in Copenhagen, so the people attending cultural events. So what they had when they approached us was survey responses, and they had focus group interviews. But they weren't really convinced that these kinds of methods and metrics gave them what they wanted to show. So what we did together with them was to invent a new way of visualizing the cultural space in Copenhagen. So basically what we did was that we took data from Facebook, and we took 1 year of data that kind of comprised every user that had interacted with content on Facebook related to culture in Copenhagen. So that would be, if I were to go on Facebook and I have liked a post from the Royal Theatre, I would be in the dataset. And we had a dataset of around 500,000 unique users. What we did with that dataset was we turned it into a network where you could actually see the position of the Royal Theatre in comparison to the rest of the cultural actors on the Copenhagen scene. And that map was actually then used by the Royal Theatre as a new way of representing or making their environment visible. When we do studies of critical metrics, we are really interested in inventing metrics that make things visible that weren't visible before. That's one of the ambitions of our lab, is to try to invent new visibilities by inventing new ways of measuring and counting.